Welcome back. This is Dr. James Patterson, and this is video number 6 in this short video series on writing academic writing, specifically writing research papers for your university professors at the junior and senior year in a 4-year bachelor's degree. In this particular video, I want to give you a quick review, a quick list of drafting your first draft. Now, elsewhere I've spent time talking about pre-writing. Elsewhere I have spent a lot of time talking about outlining. This video assumes that you have done your homework. This video assumes that you have done your research. And this video assumes that you have outlined your paper. So now we're going to take that outline, whether a formal or a comprehensive outline, and turn it into a first draft. The goal of writing the first draft is to write the first draft. Here we go. Point number 1, you want to write simply and directly. Whether you're doing this by hand with pen or pencil, or if you're using a keyboard to type with, write simply and write directly. Number 2, use words that are simple and familiar to you. This is not the time for stretching your vocabulary to try to impress your professor. This is a time to get your ideas down on paper simply and in a familiar vocabulary. Number 3, avoid redundancy. Avoid redundancy. Let me give you an example that I see a lot in my student papers, and it drives me crazy. The student gives me a quote from a published scholarly source, end quote. The next sentence says, "This quote means to me, ... And the student tells me in his or her own words what I just read from the scholar. That is a redundancy that is not necessary in your paper. You're just wasting time. So, avoid redundancy. Next, avoid idioms, avoid cliches, avoid slang, and avoid figurative language. I know many of you have had English composition professors who wanted you to become literary giants who create novels and great works of literature. But if you're in administration of justice or nursing or sociology or the sciences, that's not what the professor wants to read. The professor wants to read language that is concise and clear. So avoid idioms, avoid cliches, avoid slang, and avoid figurative language. And then next, avoid bias. Now the question comes up at this point, if I'm writing a persuasive paper for my professor, if I'm writing an argumentative paper for my professor, how do I do that and avoid bias? Do I not need to take a position in the paper? The answer is yes, you do need to take a position in the paper, but you can avoid bias by treating your topic and the opposing viewpoints with respect. Don't use any fallacies, don't attack your opponents, don't belittle your opposition views, be respectful toward the opposition, and you can't be respectful toward the opposing viewpoint unless you have also researched the opposing viewpoint. So you avoid bias by doing all of your homework before writing the first draft. And last but not least, when you're writing your first draft, you want to try and mix your sentence types. Hopefully by now you're aware of simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. You want to mix those up to make it easier for your reader with a little variety. But speaking of making things easier for your professor, for your reader, let me finish with 2 points. Number 1, short sentences read faster. Point number 2, smaller paragraphs are easier to read. If I'm a university professor and I've got a paper coming in on Thursday or Friday, I'm going to spend all weekend reading papers. Long sentences and terribly long paragraphs are a torture to get through. It requires an enormous strain on the eye, and it requires an enormous strain on the brain. So if you are being attentive to your audience, If you recognize that your audience is your professor, shorter sentences, read faster, and smaller paragraphs chunk information together quickly are easier to read. Remember, your first draft is not your last draft. It's not your final draft. It's your first, and there will be additional drafts from there. But in this video, we've talked about some simple ideas for putting together your first draft quickly and easily. Thank you.